Take a look at this photograph. A man leaps across a puddle in Paris, captured perfectly midair. Now look at this one. A woman caught in a moment of deep thought in a New York subway in the 1940s. For nearly a century, street photography had one defining muse, the human being, and it was the art of capturing raw, uncomposed, and unfiltered human conditions in public spaces. But if you look at the landscape of street photography today, something profound has shifted. The faces are disappearing. They're being replaced by shadows, silhouettes, architecture, and abstract geometry. The bold, candid close up of the stranger is becoming a relic of the past. So, how did we get here? Today, we're diving into a 100-year history of street photography and how the genre evolved from the divisive moment to the modern era and the massive privacy shift that has changed the rules of street photography forever. Hi, I'm Steve, and let's get into this. To understand where street photography is going, we must look at where it began. In the 1920s and 30s, a technological revolution changed photography ever, and that was the introduction of the 35mm handheld camera, and most notably, the Leica. Before this, photography required heavy wooden boxes, tripods, and long exposure times. But then suddenly, photographers were liberated. They could walk, blend into a crowd, and snap a photo in a fraction of a second. This gave birth to what Henry Cartier-Bresson famously called the divisive moment, and that was the simultaneous recognition, in a fraction of a second, the significance of an event as well as its precise organization of forms, which gave this event its proper expression. Now, during the Golden Age, spanning from the 1930s to the 70s, the focus was squarely on people. Helen Levitt is celebrated for her candid, spontaneous images of New York City street life. Photographers like Robert Frank, he documented the grit and reality of American life. Then there was Vivian Mayer. She captured the quiet, intimate expressions on everyday citizens in Chicago. And later, photographers like Bruce Gilden practically jumped in front of people with a flash to capture raw, startled human reaction. In this era, the street was the stage and the ordinary people, well, they were the stars. There was an unspoken social contract, and that's this: if you walked in a public square, you were part of the public record. But as the 20th century drew to a close, that contract began to fracture. If you scroll through Instagram or popular street photography forums today, you'll notice a massive contrast in the work of the 20th century. Instead of raw, candid portraits of strangers looking into the lens, you see a lot of backs of heads, and you see people hidden in deep shadows and obscured by motion blur or silhouetted against bright light. The focus has shifted from the human condition to the graphic design and atmosphere, and we're asking ourselves why. Well, there are three main reasons for this evolution. First is artistic saturation. For decades, the candid stranger portrait was the gold standard, but with the advent of digital cameras and eventually smartphones, the internet became flooded with billions of photographs of ordinary people just walking down the street. Now, to stand out creatively, photographers had to look just past that person on the street and start focusing on the light, the theory, the juxtaposition, and the abstraction. The human form became a prop indicated by shape or scale, and rather than the emotional core of the image itself. Secondly, technology has changed how we perceive being photographed. In the time of Cartier-Bresson, a photograph was developed in a darkroom and might end up in a gallery or a book that a few thousand people saw. Today, if someone takes your photo, it can be uploaded into social media within seconds, seen by millions, and subject to public scrutiny, memes, or even doxing. The smartphone turned everyone into a potential podcaster, and as a result, public spaces lost their sense of anonymity. People became hyper-aware and hyper-protective of their image. This is what leads us to the third reason, a cultural shift in trust. We now live under a constant gaze of CCTV, corporate tracking, government surveillance, and much more. And because of this, a person walking down the street, the camera is no longer viewed as a harmless artist or a journalist documenting history. They're often viewed with suspicion, hostility, or seen as a threat to personal privacy. This cultural shift eventually codified into a law, and for the last century, the legal consensus in most democratic countries was simple. In a public space, there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. If you can see it from the sidewalk, you can photograph it. The most significant shift came out of Europe. Laws like the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, introduced strict rules regarding personal data, and under the GDPR, a person's face is considered a biometric personal data. In countries like Germany and France, strict privacy and image rights mean that publishing a recognizable photo of a stranger without their explicit consent can result in heavy fines, even if it was taken in a public park. In the US and the UK, however, the law still heavily favors a photographer's right to shoot in a public space under the freedom of expression and First Amendment. You can legally take and sell street photos as art. However, legality does not dictate social acceptability. Today, street photographers face an unprecedented amount of confrontation. Now, taking a candid photo of someone's child playing in the park or someone having an emotional moment on a bench is no longer widely accepted as a documentary art. It's frequently also met with anger and demands to delete the photograph or even a physical altercation. Street photographers today must ask themselves a question their predecessors never had to consider, and that question being, just because it's legal, is it ethical? You got to ask yourself, is street photography dead? That's far from it. It's just reinventing itself. Moving away from explicit, invasive close-ups, modern street photographers have unlocked a new wave of creativity. They are telling stories through mystery rather than clarity. A silhouette blazing against a blazing sunset or a reflection in a rain-slicked window, a shadow stretched across a concrete wall. These are the elements that still respect the anonymity of the subject while capturing the poetic mood of modern city life. Street photography has always been a mirror of society, and in the 20th century, that mirror reflected our desire to see and understand one another. In the 21st century, it reflects our collective anxiety, our craving for privacy, and a complex relationship with the lens and the world around us. The human face may be fading from the frame, but the spirit of the street remains as alive as ever. So what do you think? Has street photography lost its magic now that privacy concerns have changed the game, or is this new abstract era more creative than ever? Well, let me know in the comments below, and also let me know if you've ever delved into street photography and what were some of your anxieties, or how did you feel about it itself? Well, if you've enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe for more photography history and analysis, and until then, this is Steve. I'll catch you in the next video.